Well, I'm just trying to look and see who has, Chris, in case, I don't know if you know this or not, but I have been told by Victoria that Cyrus Reed wants to say something for about 5 minutes,
I
beginning of the meeting.
also.
Okay, and then I heard that I've been told that Rita wants to also say something about the, the lack of money for the CCAP in the budget, and maybe Molly on the same thing. I'm not sure.
Planning to make an announcement, but if Rita comes, that would be great to have her do that.
Yeah, supposedly she would like to make a plea at the beginning of the meeting when we have announcements for people to attend these Zoom council person meetings.
Town hall.
Town halls, yes. To try to just persuade them to fund the CCAP.
Yeah. Well, theoretically, it is funded, but it's kind of hard to tell when you look at the budget, as it has been published so far. It's like, okay, where is the money?
Well, if they don't put it in the budget, it's not going to be funded, I guess.
Well, they're looking at a $1.7 billion deficit so far from coronavirus and sales tax loss.
Yeah.
So, and also they had a kind of sketchy idea that that the city would only provide the funding, well, that only the funding that was current for that department would be applied, and they'd find funding from outside providers. So that never seemed viable, and
Well, they already have some grants from outside providers for some of their work, but it's still a question. Make sure that the money is there and will not be magically shuffled away to something else.
right.
I'm in the meeting. So has Critter Man checked in yet, Chris?
Not that I know of.
Okay, well.
Dan, this is Victoria. Critterman is going to check in probably a little bit after 7. I spoke with him today, and he expects to start talking about 7:15-ish.
Okay. We'll see if we can, yeah, we have some announcements, Victoria, as you know.
Yes, sir.
And so I don't know if he'll be able to start at 7:15 or a little bit later, but whatever, we'll see.
That's fine. That's fine. It was 7:15-ish, so no worries.
Okay.
This is Liz. Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I've lost my square and I was trying to change it from a square to a face, but somewhere I'm something's different. Than the usual. And John, this is Liz. unless Arthur feels to the contrary, we can take off the slide about needing hike leaders, because we're not going to be doing any hikes for a while.
Okay.
So keep the slide, but we don't need to emphasize it right now.
I had up there that, well, if you read it, I'm sure you saw what I said about it.
And it's not bad for them to see it. It's just, I don't want them to think we have a bunch of things they could sign up for right now.
Okay.
Wait, leaders, a guide to our volunteer.
Wow, who's that dude?
Somebody we used to know, right? We don't know him anymore.
Strange question, but can anybody see me or see a box that has my name?
I see a box that has your name.
Okay, that's what I started with, and I've lost even that now. Oh, here. Okay, box with my name, but I don't have it. I did not click for hiding self-view, so I don't know why it's doing that.
You clicked for start video, right?
I think so. Oh, no, okay, thank you. Usually I just have to click for, there I am. Not pretty, but it's there.
Top of your head.
Let's see.
Dan, you have light on your face in your other picture. What happened?
Pardon?
I said you had light in your other picture on your face, but in your Zoom, you're the shadow man.
I don't know. Lights up overhead.
And your backlit.
See, Sahan is with us. Hi.
Hi guys.
Who is?
Sahan Yaram. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
Hi, Tom, nice to meet you.
He
Nice to meet you too. Hi.
I can't tell.
volunteer
Uh-huh.
doing already a number of things. Working with Molly and David.
That's wonderful. We appreciate your participation.
I
Thank you.
see Bob Gisanato's name. Bob, are you there just now?
Yes, I am.
Hi.
The first one in.
It's been a while since I've seen you.
I've been sequestering in place.
Yeah.
Know that well.
Well, I hope people start to show up pretty quick. It's after 7 already.
Oh, we're beginning to get people now.
26 people.
I can't see but 3 of them.
No, we have several more.
This doesn't seem to work like the bigger computer. Well, has Rita checked in?
No,
How about Cyrus Reed?
nope.
Molly?
Molly is checked.
Present.
There's Molly.
Hey, Molly.
Hey,
Good to kind of almost see you.
I see what I need to do here. Maybe you can see me now.
I
Yeah.
do. Great.
There you are.
I
Hi,
can't.
Molly.
Hi.
Hi, Julie.
Hey.
I don't get this thing.
Do you see the grid? It's on mine. It's upper left, Dan, and it's the like 3 across, 3 up and down.
I can't get beyond 4 pictures here. And one of them is me.
Well, that's okay because you're going to want to see the screen anyway.
Yeah, but I just want to see who's here. So Molly, can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you wanting to say something during the announcements tonight?
Just very briefly.
Well, of course, it's going to be briefly.
I know.
And how about Rita? Is she supposed to show up to say something tonight about CCAP?
I don't know if she's going to be on it or not.
Okay. Well, are you going to speak about the CCAP funding situation?
Either I could or Chris could. Whoever wants to, someone needs to. Oops.
Do that.
What do you want to say about, Molly?
I wanted to say something about the Dallas ISD efforts on green policies.
Okay.
Got off a couple of calls regarding that.
Well, I think, we better think about getting started here pretty soon.
Yeah, we're good. It's after 7.
So let's start off with with the announcements by the people who are present. Chris, and you want to start with Cyrus Reed's still not here, right?
Correct.
Okay, Molly, let's start with you to talk to us about Dallas ISD.
All right. As y'all probably know, or most of you do, there was a resolution that was passed due to work over the past year and a half to get Dallas ISD to start developing some greener policies regarding energy and solid waste and transportation. It started out with transportation, looking for getting them to purchase electric buses. So we've been meeting now for over a month, and we have come up with some policy recommendations. And I was on am on the energy management subcommittee, so I can post something later, or maybe I can send a link. They were talking about uploading some information about some of our developing policy recommendations, and we will be soliciting input, kind of like was done for the CCAP, except at a much smaller scale. But we don't have anything yet on the DISD website yet, but I can send something out to Chris just as soon as it is up, so people can see kind of where we are. And we'll, as soon as we set a date for some virtual meetings to solicit input, I will let everyone know.
Great.
Okay. And what do you think you'll be needing from us, the Sierra Club?
Input. Just want to hear what people think, what they'd like. I suspect they will want the same things that those of us who started pushing with it would be cleaner transportation, and that would be electric transportation. We would want solar whenever we can do that, solar on the schools. We want it to be as energy efficient as possible, but school gardens, all that good stuff. So we just want to hear input from people in the community. So Sierra Club members, especially, we want to be able to reach out to some of the communities who may not be so digitally connected, some of the ones who have the most need to have school gardens in their neighborhood, who most need some kind of maybe a community solar participation between the city and the school, so that they can get it in their neighborhood. So we would especially want to focus on those areas and getting outreach to those communities.
Okay. Anyone want to ask Molly a question? Nobody?
This is Julie. I do. So are these all the things you mentioned are things that you'd like Sierra Club to be involved in, or are they the overview of what the whole project?
Well, the things that we have been looking at as issue areas and some of the goals and proposals, policy proposals that we're coming up with, we want input from others to say whether or not you think this is what you want. Like on the CCAP, there were proposals put forward, and want to solicit input from the community. So that's what I meant. So far, we have only looked at a few issue areas for subcommittee work. We're getting ready to work on some others.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions for Molly?
I'll just say a thank you on behalf of all of us that you're just doing such wonderful, tireless work in those areas that need it so much. And for the future of Sierrans, the future environmentalists, that you're reaching them. I appreciate it very much.
Well, I'm glad that I can do it, and it's been really inspiring to me to see what some of the students have done and are doing. And I've been really trying hard to mentor them and trying not to do too much myself. It's hard, but I keep trying to let go a little bit and encourage them. And we just had a meeting recently where they put together their own little video and PowerPoint presentation and the Zoom call. And so it was really great to see.
Molly, I'm going to email you away from this, but I have a thought that's ICO related.
Sure.
So we can do that offline at another time, but anyway, I'll throw that out to you.
Okay.
It's not more work. It's just a heads up.
Famous last words.
Well,
Okay, thanks a lot, Molly.
Sure.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
if Rita's not checked in yet and Cyrus Reed is not checked in yet, we probably should move on and start with some committee reports such as the Conservation Committee.
Yes, yes. And by the way, David Cleven, our critter guy, is here.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. If you go to the DallasSierraClub.org conservation page, you'll see the latest that I have for things that you can take part in to help conservation causes. The top one is that the city of Dallas, this is budget time for the city of Dallas. Council persons will be conducting virtual budget town halls beginning Thursday for about 2 weeks. And if you can attend one of those from the comfort of your home, we would be grateful if you would raise the question with them, where in the budget is the money to implement the comprehensive environmental climate action plan? I have looked at what has been published from the budget, but my understanding is, although there is a page that does say that there's $500,000 for implementing CCAP, that page is sort of isolated off by itself. It's like it's not really real. And my understanding is that that line doesn't count unless it is in the line by line items on the budget. So we want our council persons to hear that we are looking for that money to be used for the if you can be at one of those virtual town halls, please give me a call and let me know. Is someone asking a question?
Yeah, but not of you.
Next, there is, some of us know who Steve Smith is. He has done presentations to the club in the past, and he has just produced a new YouTube video that I think is quite powerful. And we have a link to that on our conservation page. The thing is, Wyland, the artist who painted the Wailing Wall in downtown Dallas in 1999, created a contest. What you do, somebody's whistling, I'm going to mute that. You go to the link that is on our conservation page related to Wyland, and make a pledge about what you are planning to do to reduce your water waste. And in the course of doing that, you sign up to win a prize, and you sign up your city to win a prize. So that's kind of a fun thing. And finally, Karen Haddon and the Seed Coalition are still working to get the NRC to reject a proposal or a permit application once more from waste control specialists to store high-level nuclear waste in Andrews County, Texas. This has been, they have applied for it before, they've been rejected, they've applied for it again, they've been rejected, they keep changing their application a little bit here and there. It's really a bad idea for many, many reasons. Largely for us, it's because trains would be bringing high-level nuclear waste in degraded storage containers that are not the latest type that should be used, from all over, through Dallas and Fort Worth and Arlington, and would take them to this place in Andrews County, which is, we think, not well managed. So the links that you need to learn about that are on the conservation page. And most recently, we're asking for letters to the editor. Ask your newspaper to report on this so that we can get attention to the fact that Waste Control Specialists is still trying to bring this high-level nuclear waste through Texas when it really should be more safely stored where it's coming from. Cyrus Reed just came in. I think he just came in.
I apologize. I was
Hey.
I double booked myself because there's a Houston call on their climate action plan, and I was thinking this was tomorrow. So I got mixed up. There are too many Zoom calls nowadays, and it gets confusing. But yeah, I'm on, at least for a little while.
Did you have something you wanted to say to this group?
Well, just two things very quickly. First is, if you haven't seen it, the Lone Star chapter is advertising for a new director. The intent is that, I've been interim director for over a year, but the intent is to hire somebody new if we can find somebody good. And then I would go back to my lobbying and conservation hats, which would be a relief because I'm sort of stressed out these days. And we're also opening up a position for water. And so I can send a note, I guess, in the chat with a link. So if you know people who might be interested in either of those positions, we're actively recruiting now. So that's the first announcement. The second announcement is you all know that there's a coal plant that we thought was retired. I don't know if you talked about this already, but Gibbons Creek Coal Plant in East Texas is a coal plant that was jointly owned by the cities of Denton, Garland, and Bryan. It's actually near Bryan, east of Bryan. But there are apparently negotiations going on to potentially sell the coal plant. And so we're working on an action alert right now. We have one actually live, but we think this might come to the city councils in Garland, Denton, and Bryan in September, because under the terms of the agreement, they have to complete the sale by the end of September. So we initially thought it might even be on the Denton City Council next week, but I've since heard they pulled it off, that they're not, which is good. And so we're trying to get a lot of pressure. So I can share that add up campaign link, and we would love to get, and basically the emails go to the city council members of the 3 cities. So I can share both those announcements in the chat, and if is anyone taking notes for your meeting, maybe they can, just cut and paste them into notes or whatever. And that's about all let me do a third announcement. The third announcement is we've been working quite a bit on the Railroad Commission and trying to get better policies on flaring. Unfortunately, all the Railroad Commission has done is propose to make a better form for reporting of flaring and venting, which isn't actually what we wanted. But we'll be doing some action alerts on that in the coming.
Blacker than you or I.
And I think with that, I'll let you guys get back to your other announcements, but I'll put some links in the chat.
Thank you, Cyrus.
Okay. Another one,
Cyrus.
Cyrus, is that the Sierra Club has officially endorsed Biden and Harris.
Yes, I was expecting, I didn't know if David Griggs was going to be on the call, but I was, he's our political committee chair. So I don't think it was unexpected that they endorsed Biden, but I think it's the right thing to do given who our president is. So we'll be gearing up both to support Biden, but also importantly for here in Texas, and go to turntexasgreen.org. We're endorsing a whole lot of candidates in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we're going to try to, turn the Texas House green at the very least. So we'll be doing a lot of work on that in the coming months.
All right. Thank you, Cyrus.
Well, just a reminder here to follow up on what Cyrus says, that if you actually want to do something about who our current president is to support the Biden-Harris ticket, go to sc.org/GOTV and get involved, because we got campaigns going, letter writing, texting, and phone banking in battleground states, as well as some work in Texas. So sc.org/GOTV, in case you haven't heard this spiel before, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Chris, are there any other committee chairs that would like to make a report at this time? Because our speaker is present, apparently, right, Chris?
He is here. And when you are ready to turn things over to him, I will make him the host and he can share his screen.
Okay. Well, if there's no other committee chairs that want to make a report, we're going to move on to our speaker for the evening. So
Dan,
Victoria, yes, Liz.
that's okay. I was just going to say, regarding outings, I thought Arthur might be on the call. We've gotten the first draft of the getting back to outings. It makes it difficult for it's the first phase. It's in different tiers. I haven't been able to review the whole thing yet, but it is somewhat restrictive in the sense that it's going to make our February trip difficult. But we've at least gotten the first step. They've taken the first step from National to update us on how we can get back into doing some outings. But it's still going to be, the August 31st deadline will, I'm sure, not stand, and it's definitely going to be into the fall before we can start doing some things. And what we can do at that point will be minimal. Very
All right.
restrictive.
Thank you, Liz. Victoria, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to introduce our speaker for the evening, please?
I would love to. Hello, everyone. Thank you so, so much for coming and being with us tonight at the Dallas Sierra Club meeting. This has become an annual event for us to have Critterman every August, and it's something that I look forward to. I don't know if you all were in attendance a year ago, but we had quite some squeals, and those were from the adults, when Critterman brought out his tarantulas and his creepy crawlies last time. So please enjoy the program tonight. Also, as a note, next month we're going to have Brittany from the Heard Museum, which is in Collin County, and it's a nature preserve. Please come back and listen to her talk about their battle to continue to have nature and conservancy in the exploding Collin County. Without further ado, Critterman, thank you so much for being here. Please take over.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me back, although it's a little bit different than the program that I did for you last year. So this one's virtual for obvious reasons. I guess just a quick check to make sure that everyone can hear me all right.
Yeah.
And that everyone can see me. If you can't, if I'm just in a tiny little box, should be a setting up there on your screen if you haven't been using Zoom very much to change your view so it kind of spotlighting on me. I will try and look for raised hands, although there's only a handful of people that are actually going to show up in my feed, because what I'll probably do, just so that we don't have any squeals or loud noises or anything like that all of a sudden suddenly appear, I'll probably mute everybody, but I will try and keep track if I see anybody. You know, you have your little on your dot on your chat thing there, your participants thing, where you can raise your hand, or I'll be looking for those of you that actually have your video on. That are in my screen here. If I see anybody raising their hand, that might mean that something technically has gone awry and that I'm off air or something. So I guess I should ask the person that handed over to me. Victoria, are we good to go then?
Yes, absolutely, sir. The platform is yours, and thanks again so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm glad to be back.
I just handed over the host to you so that we have your screen, but I'm going to reclaim the host so that I can continue to admit people from the waiting room, but we will still see your screen.
Gotcha. Now, one thing you may have to do possibly then if you take back the host is when people come in, you might need to take control and mute if you see someone's microphone's on and they're chatting amongst themselves. The other thing is, I'm not sure once you take control if I'm spotlighted or not, but I think you as the host can spotlight one speaker. So you might have to do that if it doesn't look like I'm like that anymore.
I think we will still see you.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, my name is David Cleven. I am a wildlife educator. Basically what that means, I travel around to schools and libraries and pretty much anybody that's interested in learning about the natural world, and I bring our animal ambassadors with me, which since March 13th has been, well, virtually impossible and very difficult. The handful of programs that I've actually done in person really more involved a library setting up the camera and me doing a Zoom program from a conference room at their building as opposed from here. And that was just because they didn't want to, they wanted to have obviously control with having kids and things like that have access to things. So, so I'm, still kind of getting used to this whole new way of doing programs. And it's been really tough on our organization, to be honest with you, because we really depend on doing our wildlife education outreach programs to support the animals that we have here. And so we have about 55 animals that we care for full time. Most of the animals came to us because they needed a home for one reason or another. So a couple of the animals were rescues considered non-releasable for one reason or another. None of the animals that we're meeting tonight, but some of our more exotic animals from places like Africa and Asia were sometimes once people's pets, and they got in over their head and found out either the hard way that it was either a bad idea or in some cases illegal to have certain animals as a pet. Now, why does that mean that I get to have them? Well, first of all, I do have the background for it. I went to school to learn basically how to work with animals hands-on, from all their husbandry needs to just the whole process of communicating and working with an animal that thinks very differently than like a domestic animal. And that was a very important part of my background, because really everything that I do is on the animal's terms. It's not on my terms. So all the animals you're going to meet tonight, they don't have to come out. They choose to participate, is the best way to put it. But of course, the animals, they tend to enjoy that because they like the interaction. It's stimulating for them, just like hopefully this is going to be stimulating and fun for all of you tonight. Now, the theme for tonight is Native Texas. Texas Tales is actually the name of this program. But for me, this is kind of a really big deal. It's a really important program that we do with Native Texas species, because people tend to care so much about animals in faraway places that get a lot of attention, and for good reason. But I think sometimes people forget that animals that live around us, that we maybe see all the time, or that are easy to go and see if you go hiking or camping, that they sometimes take those animals for granted, or maybe they don't appreciate them quite the same way because they're more familiar. But the thing is that the animals that live right around us are some of the most amazing animals that we share the planet with, at least in my opinion. And if you think about it, animals have always been important to the people that have called Texas home. Native Americans, the very first people that called this place home, they were famous for living off the land. Funny thing about that is the last time I checked, we all live off the land. It's just we have some modern conveniences to make that easier. So more and more people are less connected to the land than they once were. And that's our mission, to reconnect people, to make them care more about animals and the role that they play out in the wild, so that they'll always want to protect them and the places that they live, because not only do they make the world a more interesting, beautiful place to live, but of course they make things work. So that being said, the very first animal is one of my very favorite Texas animals to talk about, because I get to talk a little bit about history, some American history. This animal actually earned its name over 200 years ago on the prairies of Nebraska during the Corps of Discovery. Some people like to call it the Lewis and Clark expedition, which it was never called that. Yeah, the Corps of Discovery was, this exploration of the West, but I don't think a lot of people realize that Thomas Jefferson, he was really fascinated by kind of like science and maybe what kind of things they might find out there, not just the people and the route that they would travel, but what kind of animals might still be out there, because they had actually found the remains, the bones of a giant sloth on Thomas Jefferson's land. And so I bet he probably thought that maybe some of these gigantic animals might still live out in the Western United States once they started exploring. Of course, they never found a giant sloth, although they did find a couple of animals that might be loosely related to them. That being said, this first animal got its name during that expedition, okay? A little over 200 years ago. And this animal is famous because this animal lives in a town. And I might be switching things around here a little bit. So forgive me as I disappear off camera once in a while. It's just so that I can use my close-up camera to get a little bit better view of the animal. So I'm going to switch my camera right there. And let's see here. Because if we're going to do things virtually, it just makes sense that we get nice and close. There we go. So this animal got its name during that expedition 200 years ago. This animal is famous for living in a town, and the biggest town of these animals there ever was right here in Texas. There are about 400 million of these animals living in one town. Actually, I'll move this back here. That way I can get nice and close up here to the camera. There we go. This is Raider. Boy, we're really close, aren't we, Raider? Hold on here. We didn't check all of our camera angles before I started, so forgive me as I adjust my camera up just a little bit there. There we go. There we go. That is Raider right there. Now, Raider, you might be thinking is some type of a ground squirrel. We don't have ground squirrels per se, like groundhogs. This is a prairie dog. Yeah, I don't know why we don't celebrate Prairie Dog Day in Texas instead of Groundhog Day. Prairie dogs can see their shadows just as well as a groundhog last time I checked. So Prairie Dog. Now, of course, the prairie dog is not really a dog. Everyone knows that. The prairie dog is a rodent. It's actually kind of squirrel, but they're not the kind of squirrel with a big bushy tail. They actually have a very small tail. Yep, black-tailed prairie dog. The prairie dog makes their home and lives most of their lives underneath the ground. I think it's actually pretty cool that they call this little animal a prairie dog, right? And that they call the place that they live a town. First, do you know that you're in a prairie dog town? Turn you this way so they can actually see your face there. You know that you're in a prairie dog town when you see their city limit sign, which is just a mound of dirt that sticks up above the prairies there. In the middle of these mounds are tunnels. The tunnels usually drop straight down into the ground. Some of them go down about 12 to 14 feet with a listening post about 4 to 6 feet down where they can listen for anything going on. And they will dive down these tunnels. And of course, the tunnels are basically their roadways. It's how they get from one part of the town to the other, to their neighborhood, which they call wards. And in every prairie dog ward, right, you have these families living in their own individual homes. So it's a lot like a human home. Prairie dogs even have rooms that sound familiar. They have a bedroom, they have a nursery, which is where they feed and care for the young. They even have a dry room, which is basically their kitchen. And prairie dogs eat grass. 250 prairie dogs eat as much grass as one cow does every day. That's a lot of grass, which is also where the conflict began for the prairie dog, because many ranchers and farmers that came west after Lewis and Clark brought with them a lot of animals that ate grass: sheep, goats, cattle, horses, of course. So they saw them as competition. So a lot of ranchers were trying to eliminate prairie dogs. As a matter of fact, a lot of ranchers still in some places try and eliminate prairie dogs because they see them as competition. What they've actually learned, though, by studying these little guys is that prairie dogs don't just eat grass. They eat a lot of different plants, including shrubby, bushy trees like mesquite. I don't know if you know anything about mesquite, but it develops very deep root systems, roots going down as far as 40 feet deep underneath the ground, which will basically steal all the water from grass. And what they've discovered is everywhere that they got rid of prairie dog towns successfully, they ended up with almost no grass instead of more grass, because the prairie dogs were actually chewing down those shrubby, bushy trees, keep the prairies, the grass is healthy for all the animals that live there. And this is even more amazing to me. Because prairie dogs are always building these new tunnels and homes and leaving empty homes behind constantly, they create habitat and homes for other species. There are 22 species of animals that would disappear from Texas if the prairie dog disappeared, and 150 species that depend on them for their survival in some form or fashion. And of course, this is all backed up by Texas Parks and Wildlife that has been doing quite a bit of research on these animals. So prairie dogs are actually considered beneficial for the health of the prairies. Now, Raider here was a rescue from Lubbock, Texas. If anybody out there went to Texas Tech, you would certainly know why he's named Raider. Of course, they still have quite a good sized prairie dog town that people can actually go visit right there. And of course, a lot of, as some people in the area call them, unsanctioned prairie dog towns. Just they naturally exist out there. But those prairie dog towns are essential still to the health of the prairies of the U.S. Now, this little squirrel, of course, earns their name prairie dog because, well, prairie dogs live in a community and they help each other. They help each other by looking out for danger. And there's usually a couple prairie dogs that their position in the group is to be kind of like a sentry, an early warning system. And they have a very high-pitched barking sound that is their little distress call to warn all the other prairie dogs when there's danger. And when Meriwether Lewis wrote down in his journal one day, a little over 200 years ago, he did not write down that they saw a bunch of squirrels making barking noises. He wrote down the name prairie dog. And by the way, this animal's American history lesson doesn't end there, because of course, if anybody's read about Lewis and Clark's journey across the U.S., they actually caught a handful of animals up, and when they stopped for winter, they actually sent someone back to Washington, D.C. to just kind of give an example of a couple of the animals that they'd come across so far. And they actually sent back a couple of prairie dogs were amongst just a handful of animals that got sent back. And that those two prairie dogs they sent back actually lived at the White House for a period of time, and then in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, which by that time in American history had been turned into a natural history museum. So prairie dogs were pretty famous back in the day. And that is our little friend Raider, our prairie dog. There we go. There we go. And we can switch there. Now, I know that some of you might have questions, and I think maybe what might end up working probably best for this situation, so people don't have to constantly unmute and mute themselves, is I'll just make sure to leave lots of questions, time for questions at the very end, and look for my host here. I can see you on camera. So if that works for the host here, just give me a thumbs up. Perfect. All right. So that is Raider, our prairie dog. Yeah, it's just about bedtime. Prairie dogs are diurnal animals, so this, when it's getting dark, that is normally when they go to sleep. Now, as cute as a prairie dog is, of course, they're an herbivore, a plant-eating animal. Anytime you have a whole bunch of plant-eating animals, well, you have to have a balance in nature always, which means you have to have some predators to keep them in balance. And there was an animal that was once found everywhere in the prairies of Texas, everywhere that prairie dogs live. And not because they were exactly friendly neighbors. Well, they were built to hunt and eat prairie dogs. This is a very long and skinny animal. And I will say that this is not the exact species or kind of animal that was found in the prairies of Texas. This animal is a cousin to the animal that was found on the prairies of Texas. This is Slinky. Slinky is a little bit easier to handle with being able to move around, whereas the prairie dog is not quite as easy. He just likes to stay nice and close to me. So Slinky is a kind of weasel called a ferret. Now, this is not the same kind of ferret that lived in the wilds of Texas. That's called the black-footed ferret. I could not share a black-footed ferret with you, even if I wanted to, because they're still considered one of the rarest mammals in the United States, and they're still considered an endangered species, despite all efforts so far, right? So this animal is basically adapted or built exactly like his wild cousin, which basically allows me to kind of always share with people how I think we take it for granted, but that animals are adapted or built for doing sometimes very specific jobs. Most animals that want to catch a prairie dog have to wait for them to come out of the tunnels, right? Yeah, I know. You're saying no, I know you don't. Yeah, ferrets don't have to wait for the prairie dog to come out of the tunnel because they're long and skinny. Yeah, they're tunnel shaped, you might say. Yeah, it is not a problem for a ferret to squeeze down in that very tight tunnel that the prairie dogs are trying to hide inside. Now, of course, there's a problem with the prairie dog and the ferret down there. For the prairie dog, they built the tunnel. They know where they go. The ferret has no idea where they're necessarily going. So they're going to have to use every sense that they have to help them navigate through the tunnels. Well, first of all, the first thing you'll notice is I'm holding up here. I'm getting him close to the camera. He's very curious, and he is smelling the computer. He's smelling the display. He smells pretty much everything that I put in front of his face. Yeah, because there's always a chance it might have something to do with food. So he's very olfactory centered, right? Everything goes through the sense of smell. So he smells everything in front of him. So when he enters into the tunnels, that's all they're doing. They're smelling the dirt tunnels. They smell the surface, and they can actually track which tunnels have been used most recently by the prairie dog. So sense of smell is very important. Of course, sense of smell is also how they remember each other. Yeah, I know it tastes like a prairie dog popsicle right now. He's licking me. Yeah, the sense of smell is also how they remember family and friends, and so that's also how they greet each other. They'll usually kind of sniff at each other, just like a couple of dogs might. So, tracking his prey, he's smelling the tunnels. Now, of course, while he's smelling, he's listening. You probably see his ears there right in front. I wonder if everyone saw the ears of the prairie dog. A lot of people don't even notice the ears in a prairie dog. They're so small. And that's because one thing we know is that animals that live in tunnels, at least to spend a lot of time down there, they do not want to have large ears because large ears are not great for trying to squeeze through tunnels underneath the ground, because as soon as you go down into a tunnel, like if you're a rabbit, you have to lay the ears down. Not very effective. So the ferret and the prairie dog both have small ears that they can hold up the entire time, and they're basically listening for the sounds of the prairie dogs. Now, I'm guessing that there's probably a few of you on here that are huge fans of animals like I am and really love animals. There may be a couple of you watching that maybe when you watch some of the TV shows where you have predators hunting animals, prey, that you're cheering for the plant-eating animal to get away every time. See, not me. It's like I don't really cheer. I just wait and see what happens, because here's the thing. I love both predators and prey, and I know that the predators aren't going to survive without the prey. Well, here's the thing. Yeah, this guy right here doesn't like a fair fight. Predators do not like a fair fight. They like to win easily. And so they're trying to locate the easiest prey to catch. And the easiest prairie dog to catch and eat without that prairie dog fighting back are baby prairie dogs. So that is something that some people find difficult, is that is usually what they're going for. But keep in mind that there were once 400 million prairie dogs in one town. But in the entire town, there's probably only about 1,000 ferrets that actually cover that same geographical area. So they're actually helping to maintain somewhat of a balance out there with the job that they're supposed to be doing. Now, of course, the last sense that he has that's really important, I'm going to see if I can get him to sit still. I know you're moving real fast, so you probably see them sticking out some on the side of his face, the whiskers. Whiskers are often not noticed on most animals for the role that they play in navigation, right? You just draw them on a cat. But the reason a cat's whiskers stick out to the side is to tell them how much space they have when they're going through an opening. But if you look at a cat or the ferret, you also notice that the whiskers can stick out in front of the face. Because if you're running through the dark, you don't want to smash your face into the wall. It doesn't end the day well, right? So the whiskers in front keep him from crashing. The whiskers that stick out to the side aren't exactly as wide as the widest part of his body. That was, if he sticks his head through a tunnel, he'll always know if he has enough room to do what the ferret, the weasel's built to do. That is to turn around in tight spaces. Yes, that is his legs sticking up over the top of his head. This may look painful to some of you, but this is how he sleeps. Exactly like that, folded in half. I've actually walked in, I panicked because he looked like he was broken the way he's sleeping, like his head flipped over on top of his back and stuff. It's kind of weird. They do have a backbone. They just have one of the most flexible backbones in the world. You might say that the ferret was especially built for hunting the prairie dog. And they were. As a matter of fact, they were so well built for hunting them that when a lot of ranchers and farmers came west and were trying to get rid of prairie dogs in a lot of different ways, trapping, poisoning, they never got rid of all the prairie dogs, ever. They're still doing, for the most part, pretty well. But they accidentally got rid of the animal that was best built to hunt the prairie dog to begin with, and that was the black-footed ferret, his cousin right here. And what I always tell people is that, listen, we can't judge people from their view of the world 100, 200 years ago, because it was their reality, and in some cases they just didn't know any better. To be honest, they could look out and they could just see prairie dogs for as far as the eye could see. As far as they were concerned, it was endless, right? But now we know that that's not true, that humans can have great impact on the land, and all we need to do is make sure that people learn from the past, learn from history, and not repeat those mistakes. And so even though a lot of ranchers and farmers were responsible a long time ago for the demise of the black-footed ferret, well, they're also going to be the key to the return here to Texas. And there are a handful of ranchers that I've spoken to out in West Texas that is still considered prime prairie dog and ferret habitat that would like to be opened up as a site for a black-footed ferret recovery site. The problem is, as you might all imagine, that, well, people tend to get very nervous when you say that you're going to reintroduce an endangered species to an area, because they worry about what is that going to mean for their land or their property if an animal shows up dead or something like that. And so I truly hope that we find a way to return black-footed ferrets to Texas, because out of their historical range, so they were found in 12 of the U.S. states. So far, they only have release sites in 8 of those states. And one of the states that they do not yet have a release site for black-footed ferrets to return them back out to the wild is Texas. And it's because of the landowners very concerned about what might happen to their land or property. But what we hope is through education, and there's a lot of ranchers and farmers in West Texas that are willing to be the release sites, but they've got to convince their neighbors. And I tell people, how big of a deal is the black-footed ferret recovery program? Well, there were 18 black-footed ferrets that they found after they thought they'd already gone extinct. They found 18 of them still alive on a ranch in Wyoming. And that 18 black-footed ferrets, after about 40 years of the black-footed ferret recovery program, has produced about 4,000 kits, 4,000 young. And they have, in recent years, been releasing about 150 black-footed ferrets back out into these release sites in those 8 states, and of course, parts of Canada and Mexico. And I hope that one day they return to Texas as well. So, and that is Slinky our ferrets right there. Say hello, Slinky, or goodbye in this case. Yeah. By the way, quick note in case there's any kids watching at home. I know these animals probably look cute and cuddly and all that. That ferret is not a wild ferret. It is a domestic ferret. They were actually domesticated about 1,000 years ago by humans for the same reason humans domesticated cats. Rodent control, they're pretty good at it. But even a domestic ferret is a bit of a challenge because let's just say they like to sleep all day and party all night. And so, yeah, when you're trying to go to bed is when they're most active. You can see he's starting to get really active and full of energy. So that is Slinky. All right. Well, so maybe now, if I move things around here again, we could have a little bit of an introduction to an invasive species. Not here, of course, in the US. There we go. Oh, see, now I knew that was going to happen. My Bluetooth, there we go. We'll just do it the old school way. There we go. And we'll make sure we can see my table here. There we go. Pull out just a little bit there. Yes, there's a live animal in there. Okay, so yes, some animals can be considered invasive species when they're introduced to places that they're not supposed to be. Well, this is an animal that is found primarily in South America. This animal was sent to southern Texas, the Philippines, and Australia to eat cane beetles. This is a marine toad, although some of you may know this animal as a cane toad. So the cane toad is a marine toad from South America. They just stopped calling them marine toads when they sent them to other parts of the world. By the way, this toad has yet another name. In the very south part of Texas where they sent these guys, this guy is known as the giant toad because we just like to think that everything's bigger in Texas, right? So yes, this is a toad. Now the toad here that I'm holding, you can see pretty good size, a little bit smaller than a dinner plate right now, and definitely not done growing. Now frogs and toads are related to each other, but they're a little bit different. Usually we call them frogs if they spend most of the time in the water or up in the trees and they have kind of smooth, shiny skin. This is Prince Charming. I know, perfect name. Don't give him a kiss. This is as good as it gets, ladies. Yeah, toads usually have dry, bumpy looking skin and spend most of their time on the land. Now, being related to the frog, have a lot in common. Of course, they both eat a lot of bugs and insects. And this guy catches a bug or an insect just like a frog would. They have that nice, long, sticky tongue. Here's the thing, though. You can see it takes both hands just to get this guy to hold on to him. This is a big toad. The giant toad, marine toad, does not just eat bugs and insects at this size, which is why it was a problem that they sent them to Australia, where they started not just eating bugs, but also very small marsupials, which really upset the people of Australia. They were not too excited about that. This guy can basically catch and eat a mouse or a rat and catch it with that sticky tongue and swallow it whole. I don't know if anyone saw Star Wars or remember Jabba the Hutt, but that's kind of creepy if you ask me. Yeah, that's basically what they look like when they eat something. Now, of course, this guy here has not always been this big when he was born. Of course, they're born as tadpoles. They eat and grow through that metamorphosis, that change, and slowly they develop their legs. And he's got some pretty long legs. See if I can tuck one of them out there. There's a little leg kind of sticking down there. There we go. I like to hold on to it there. These guys have amazing leaping ability. This guy can jump about 25 feet at a time, 25 feet. And that is considered definitely a form of defense, just a quick escape, usually into water. So they usually stay close to water, primarily kind of maintain temperature and body control. Now, one form of defense that comes in handy for these guys are their bumps on their body. Now, of course, not the little tiny bumps all over their body. Those are just warts. The bumps you have to watch out for are next to his head. See if I can get up close here. Right by my thumb, right there. Kind of see it maybe head on a little bit. Sticks up a little bit there. That is called the Peritoid Gland. Peritoid gland is filled with poison. And if a predator attacks him, like a coyote or bobcat, what he'll do is he'll turn that peritoid gland at his enemy, and he hopes that if they grab him, they do it right there. because if they grab them right there, that poison will ooze out and ruin the rest of the animal's day and probably the rest of their life, which is why it was a problem to send them to a place that they were not native to. So in South America, there are species of animals that have adapted over a very long time to be able to hunt and eat these toads, no problem at all. So they could keep their population under control. But when you sent them to Australia, well, any of the snakes, including venomous ones that tried to eat these guys, or any of the few animals that were considered omnivores in Australia that tried to eat them, would die from poisoning, which means that we have to be careful when we're going around playing around with Mother Earth, when we're trying to fix a problem, that we don't inadvertently make it into a far worse problem. So yeah, that is Prince Charming, a marine toad or cane toad from South America. Very cool animal. Yeah, I love toads. As a matter of fact, frogs and toads are an animal that we pay a lot of attention to. If you've never done this and you really are interested in doing something that contributes directly to the health and knowledge of the environment, which I know all of you do, it's tough this year to participate in some ways unless you happen to just live in a place that has like a lake or a pond or something. But every year, Texas Parks and Wildlife does an annual frog and toad count. And they actually have like a short class that people can take and learn to identify about 6 different frogs or toads. And then you just go out near a body of water and you listen and you count how many of each of the sounds you hear over a 10-minute period. They take all of this data and they constantly are taking this data on an annual basis and collecting it. And then what they found is that they can get a pretty accurate measure of how healthy a particular water environment is by the number of frogs and toads that they hear during these little 10-minute windows over the years. So it's frogs and toads, because they absorb things through their skin very easily, being amphibians, are actually a really good indicator on the health of an aquatic environment. So that's why frogs and toads are really cool for me. All right, let's see here. I know an animal that can live a long time and is definitely going to outlive me. And one of our success stories here in Texas. This animal, his name is CJ. And CJ was actually confiscated from someone who did not know it was illegal to have them as a pet. This is CJ. And CJ is a Texas tortoise. Now, we don't have a lot of tortoises in Texas. We have a lot of turtles, not a lot of tortoises. This is a Texas tortoise. Now, of course, turtles, you know, usually have web feet or flippers or fins. Of course, box turtles don't have those things. Box turtles are land turtles, which is where all of this gets confusing. But this is what happens when you leave it up to humans to give animals names. You know, sometimes we make mistakes. But anyways, that being said, tortoises are pretty unique from even the land turtles because of a couple of things. First of all, you probably noticed that he's got very round legs and armor on the outside of his legs, something you don't really see on most turtles. And those armored legs help defend him. So when he's in danger, he can tuck his head inside the shell, pull those armored legs in front and in the back there, and shuttle the doors. So that shell that you see on top here will protect him. Now the shell, of course, is just keratin, just like our fingernails, made of the same stuff as our fingernails. And if you look right up on top, you see the very light colored one, and you see the lines. Now I can't tell you how old he is by counting the lines. It's not quite like a tree where it goes through a seasonal growth, but turtles and tortoises do grow based on their environment. So how much food is available to eat and how warm it is. So if they have a nice long warm season and lots of food available, they'll grow more. So as they grow, they get these layers and stacks in their shells. So that was one right on the top and the one right back there. Those were the very first parts of his shell. So you could actually tell how big he was when he was born just by if you took each of these and measured them and then put them all back together, would tell you exactly how big when he was born. CJ is about 25 years old, and they can live 150 to 200 years, which is pretty amazing to me, considering all the things that they have to deal with just in order to survive. because of course tortoises here in Texas typically live in more arid, dry regions of West and South Texas, and they can live there a very long time, right? Now, how are they able to live and survive in the desert? Well, it's because they're basically adapted for it. All they have to do is find food and water and shelter, of course, the basics for animal life. And shelter is the easiest, although the shell doesn't really count as shelter because, of course, it doesn't come with heating or air conditioning. His backbone is actually attached on the inside of the shell, and so he can't leave his shell, and his shell grows and gets bigger as he does. But with those nice sharp claws that you see on the front of his feet there, they're very good at burrowing very quickly underneath the ground. They can basically make their shelter anywhere they want to. Food and water, well, that comes from their food source, cactus. Yeah, tortoises are among a handful of animals that have adapted to the ability to eat cactus leaves. You can see he's got a beak right there in the front like a bird, so he can bite off a chunk of cactus. Inside their mouths, they have hard bones. They can smash the spikes of the cactus. He can eat cactus leaf for food, and inside the cactus is water. A tortoise could actually go their entire life without ever taking a drink of water. As long as he can find enough green plants to eat, even cactus, they can live and survive there. So, kind of like the ferret is especially built for hunting and eating prairie dogs, this animal is especially built for living in the desert. So if they're so well built, what happened to them? Well, they didn't have any conflict with ranchers, but they did have a conflict with people of big hearts maybe, or maybe just people that wanted a cool animal to pet. Yeah, the pet trade. A lot of tortoises were removed from the wild and sold into the pet trade. Really? Are you bored? You're yawning. Really? A tortoise? You got nothing but time, buddy, and you're yawning at my program. I appreciate it. All right. Boy, it's tough when you're getting heckled by your own tortoise. Really, dude? Or maybe he's just trying to say something. I don't know. He talks slow. Anyways, where was I, CJ? Okay, so yes, the pet trade was part of it. But I think also a lot of people were just going out into the desert, right? And when they find these animals, I'm sure they felt sorry for them, figuring, hey, they're probably doing this animal a favor by taking it out of the desert and bringing it home. But I always tell people you're never doing any animal a favor by removing it out of the wild. Even if you're helping that animal, you might only be helping the animal temporarily, and really you might be hurting other animals. Because let me tell you, for every baby bird that you save that falls out of a tree, there's a snake that's not real happy with you because it was about to get a free meal, right? The circle of life. I think there was a famous philosopher by the name of Mufasa that's responsible for that quote. Yeah, the circle of life, right? I'm a very big fan of leaving animals alone as much as possible unless they need help, right? If they really need help, then make sure you get the proper people to do the help. And this guy, instead of being someone's pet, they shouldn't have had him, should have probably gone to a rehabber where the rehabber could have evaluated him and maybe released him back out into the wild, or maybe put him into a breeding program, much like a very famous tortoise that the San Diego Zoo had a Galapagos tortoise. And you probably all know that the Galapagos tortoise is an endangered species. They actually sent their Galapagos tortoise from the San Diego Zoo to the Galapagos Islands. And they sent them there, his name is Diego, to kickstart the reproduction of the Galapagos tortoises, because they had two male tortoises there that weren't all that interested in the ladies. Nope, but apparently a little competition from San Diego changed that, because as soon as Diego showed up, those other two male tortoises got things kicking into action, and that's what kickstarted the reproduction program of the Galapagos tortoise. And that's why this Texas tortoise, well, he can never be released back out into the wild because of this. I'm gonna bite your head off. Yeah, he's not afraid of anything. Yeah, they determined that before he actually came to us, that he has no fear at all. He thinks he's indestructible. Yeah, he's got a little itch on his eye there. So he's trying to scratch his face with his legs there. See, who knew that a tortoise could be so cute? He's trying to scratch his eye. Look at that, with his own scaly legs. That is CJ, our Texas tortoise there. All right. Well, now for everyone's favorite animals. First, something that's, smaller. One of the smaller animals that I have to bring out. But that's okay with the virtual technology here. Well, as close as I can get to the camera will be as close as your experience. And I can get pretty close here. Hold on, move right up there. This is Terry. There you go. And Terry looks even bigger on camera there. Terry is a tarantula. Now, there may be a few of you that maybe grew up here in Texas and maybe remember a time when you probably saw tarantulas a lot more often. We don't see them nearly as much today in the cities or in the suburbs because, of course, tarantulas are not a fan of things being disturbed. But let me tell you, tarantulas are still found here in Texas and still essentially important. Yeah, the tarantula, of course, is amongst the biggest of the arachnids here in Texas. Now, of course, all that hair on the tarantula is a form of defense. When tarantulas are threatened with danger, turn away from their enemies, kick the hairs off the back of the abdomen here with these legs, and they try and kick the hairs into an animal's face. Any hairs that end up in the animal's face, it'll make it all itchy. So it's pretty effective. Now, what makes a lot of people nervous, though, is right there in the middle, two great big teeth called fangs. Now, you can't actually see the fangs themselves. What you're looking at right in the middle between these two things, which look like legs. By the way, that's not a leg and that's not a leg. Those are called pedipalps. They're basically the equivalent of feelers for a spider. But right in the middle of those two are the fang sheaths. So they cover the fangs. Underneath those sheaths are fangs about 1/4 inch long. And to put that into perspective, if any of you were built like a tarantula, your middle two teeth would come down to about the middle of your chest. So massive teeth for an animal this size. And of course, she uses those fangs to inject venom into her prey. Almost all spiders are venomous, but it does not mean that they're almost all venomous to humans. As a matter of fact, there's only about 40 or 50 species that are truly considered dangerous to people. Most spiders are not considered all that dangerous to people, although I don't recommend ever trying to encourage or put yourself in a situation where you get bit by a tarantula, because it's definitely not going to feel very good. Yeah, so she is venomous. But the venom is just a tool, an adaptation to help them catch prey. And of course, hopefully this will show up. We've got plenty of light in here. The other thing that spiders are famous for is their web. Oh, I can see just a little bit on camera as it's moving in and out of the light there, a little bit there. If you look on this side and stretch it out a little bit more. That's the problem. You see a little bit of shadow go through there. Spider web, the light has to hit it just right in order to see it. That's why it's so good at catching bugs and insects in it. Doesn't look very impressive. I don't know about you, but I can sit and watch a spider make a spider web for a very long time. It's an amazing thing. One strand of spider web is 5 times stronger than a piece of steel, the same thickness. Oh, there's a good shot of it. And it's sticky. Now, even though that's true, spiders are tarantulas are very big spiders. They cannot make webs that they can walk on. She cannot lower herself down out of a tree with her web. So she'll actually spin that web inside a hole. Then if she catches a bug or insect, she'll just pull it into the hole, stick it in the web, and store it for later. And spiders are incredibly important animals and very underappreciated because, of course, they are nature's pest control, eating bugs and insects. And the average home in America has between 2,000 and 3,000 spiders in it. Yes, some of you probably are not thrilled to hear that, but let me tell you, you would not be able to live in your house without spiders. They're not there to bother you, and they're not this big. Trust me, if you had 2,000 to 3,000 spiders this big in your house, you'd definitely notice that. Most spiders are smaller than the eraser on top of a pencil in your home, and they're basically eating bugs and insects that are even smaller than themselves. So they're doing a very important job for us, and that is one of our tarantulas, Terry there. All right. Now, for the other animal that people don't necessarily have a love for, but just as important, his name is Arthur. And Arthur is an animal that's probably found in your neighborhood or backyard, unless you're not from around Texas. Yeah, someplace maybe outside of the North Texas area, then you might not have this exact species, but you probably have their cousins. This is Arthur. And Arthur is called a speckled king snake. This guy is stunning. He's incredible. So the speckled king snake, actually, let's see here. I think this other camera maybe picks it up even better, possibly. We'll see here. Yeah, check that out. So he's exploring right now. So this is a speckled king snake. Now, of course, many of you know that not everyone is a big fan of snakes, a big supporter of snakes, cares about them, wants to protect them, right? But snakes are incredibly important animals. This snake right here, of course, is a big rodent eater, and that is the primary role that snakes play, eating mice and rats. And of course, mice and rats, being rodents, eat a lot of plants, including farmers' crops. So you might not be a big fan of snakes, but I'm pretty sure most people are a fan of eating food. So I always tell people, well, if you don't like snakes, you must not like to eat food, because snakes do not eat your food. They eat the animals that damage the food that you would like to eat most likely. Yeah, they eat the animals damaging farmers' crops. Now, of course, people might enjoy eating food, but maybe they just don't like the way a snake looks, right? Of course, you can see here, I'm not sure which camera view it looks better on here, that one or this one here, that they have very shiny skin there. The light's bouncing right off of it there. Of course, the reason snakes look so shiny is not because they're wet or slimy. It's because every time a snake eats, they grow. Whenever they grow, they get too big and something happens to their old skin, they will shed. So they're always getting brand new skin, and that is why they look so shiny. Now, of course, there's always going to be those people that are afraid of snakes because they worry that they might be venomous. Well, I always tell people venomous snakes are not bad snakes or mean snakes, but they are definitely snakes with consequences if you mess with them, okay? So if you ever come across a snake, you don't have to know if it's venomous. Just leave it alone. That is every snake that you come across. Just leave it alone, because, well, trust me, a quick way to find out if a snake is venomous or not is to pick it up, because it doesn't matter if the snake is venomous or not. You pick it up and it'll probably bite you, right? And you're going to find out the hard way. And by the way, no matter what anybody tells you, even here in Texas, you cannot identify every snake just from the shape of the head, the shape of their eyes, or by learning a poem, because red on black, friend of Jack, does not help you identify every snake in Texas. Only the difference between the venomous coral snake, that would be red on yellow, can kill a fellow, right? Or the king snake, red on black, friend of Jack. Notice this is a king snake, does not have any red on its body. There are king snakes that do, but not all of them do. Then they'll tell you to look at the shape of the head, right? You can see it has kind of a rounded head here. But some of the most venomous snakes on the planet actually have rounded heads, not triangle-shaped heads, like a lot of people have been taught. And as a matter of fact, bull snakes and hognose snakes right here in Texas both have very pointy looking heads, and people kill them all the time. Yeah, so yeah, shape of the head is not a guarantee, especially if you're not here in Texas anyway. And then, boy, you're hard to get facing the camera there. There you go. Then the third one is actually pretty easy to tell because of the light that we have and the camera. Here in Texas, they try to look at the snake's pupils. That if it has round pupils, the middle part of the eye looks like a circle, it has no venom. And as he's moving around a little bit here, you probably can see his pupils pretty clearly there, that he has round pupils. But I will tell you that his face right now is also close enough to strike at the camera if you wanted to. So in order to see most snakes' pupils, you're going to have to get them within striking distance of your face, which is not a good way to identify a venomous snake, right? So just leave them alone, especially if it's a king snake. See, this is called a king snake, because king snakes have a very unique ability. They earn their title king because king snakes can hunt and eat and kill rattlesnakes, copperheads, cottonmouths, and coral snakes. This snake can hunt and kill and eat any venomous snake in Texas, equal in size to himself or smaller. So for anybody that ever grew up hearing that the only good snake is a dead snake, all I have to say is, well, apparently you've never heard of a king snake. This should be your favorite snake. Yeah, and this is Arthur, our king snake. And I hope this is a group of people that can appreciate his name, King Arthur. Yes, the king snake. That is Arthur. Sometimes I have to explain that to some kids. They don't always get it. So, you know, I guess I'm going to have to come up with another king name that maybe the kids would understand. I don't know. Maybe Odin. Maybe they're all fans of the Marvel universe and can appreciate a Norwegian god, king. All right, so one more animal, and I'm going to switch my camera back here as soon as I get Arthur all the way put away here. There you go, Arthur. Because we have to remember that humans have only been on this planet a very short amount of time. And even humans in North America, even a shorter amount of time compared to the age of the planet. So animals really have been here longer than us. And those animals that have been here the longest They must be doing something right, especially if they're able to adapt and live even with us here. And this very last animal is an animal that is found right here in Texas. This is an animal that lives right in Dallas. Might surprise some of you to learn that this is an animal that lives right in Dallas. As a matter of fact, they found one of these animals in a creek right next to an elementary school in Dallas some years ago. Yeah, it was a pretty big deal. People were very surprised. Now I say, well, I'm not sure why they were surprised that this animal showed up in a creek. I mean, that is how these animals have navigated the waterways of Texas for who knows how many hundreds of thousands of years. Yes, this is Robert. And Robert is an American alligator. Now, there's one very easy way to tell that this is an alligator, not a crocodile. That's by his introduction. Yeah, you probably thought I was going to say the shape of his snout or his teeth or something, right? No, his introduction. We don't have any crocodiles living in the wild Texas, but there's about 500,000 American alligators living in Texas today, which is another success story, by the way, because a little over 100 years ago, this is an animal that almost disappeared from Texas and almost disappeared from the United States, much like their cousin, the crocodile. So the crocodile, the American crocodile, is only found in a very small portion of the United States. That would be the very southern part of Florida. There's only about 5,000 to 6,000 American crocodiles, but there are an estimated probably about 3.5 million American alligators today in the United States, which is a huge turnaround. They're actually using, I work with a facility where this alligator came from that also breeds and raises Chinese alligators, which is the only other species of true alligator on the planet. And you know what it looks like? This. Think about that. Alligator species separated by thousands of miles across the planet look virtually identical. It's incredible. And they learned how to bring back the Chinese alligator by breeding and raising American alligators. They learned all about everything that they needed for them to successfully survive. And by the way, that's a little piece of information a lot of people don't know, is that it was actually the creation of alligator farms that saved the American alligator from extinction. Because of course, if an animal's skin and meat is very valuable, well, and you're trying to save them 100 years ago, how are you going to do it? Well, it was much easier for them to raise the alligators than to have to go out and catch them out in the wild. So what they actually did in several of the states is they created this alligator permit for farms, and they could go out and they could gather up 80% of the eggs that they found in any nest. And they would keep the eggs until they hatched, and then they keep the hatchlings until they reached a certain size, usually about at least 6 to 8 inches long. And these alligator farms, when they first started the program, were required to release 80% of the hatchlings back out into the wild. And what did this kind of difference did it make? Well, the natural survival rate of American alligators is a maximum of about 20% of the young would survive. And this jumped up the survival rate to about 65 to 70% of the hatchlings were surviving, which was a very quick turnaround for the American alligator. And it's a very important deal. Now, I will remind people that even though you see me holding an American alligator, and if there's any kids at home, right, there are a lot of alligators, it is still today illegal to have an alligator as a pet. This is not my pet alligator. The animals I'm sharing with you are not my pets. I have to have special permission from Texas Parks and Wildlife to give these animals a home and to share them with audiences. And that's because of my educational background, right? Because even though Robert here is only about a year old, and he was part of this breeding program down in South Texas there, he will go back down there in about another year or so. Even though there's a lot of them, right? I have to have this permission because of how big and strong they get. This alligator that you're looking at is about 1.5 feet long now, about 18 inches long, but he can already crush about 50 pounds with his jaws, 50 PSI. He's not done growing. The biggest alligator on record was an alligator by the name of Tabasco, perfect name, in Louisiana. He was 19 feet, 1 inch long, and weighed just under 1,000 pounds. That was the longest one on record. That alligator, right, they estimated had about 4,000 to 5,000 PSI, right, pounds of crushing power in their jaws, which basically means A human would have to be strong enough to lift a car off the ground to pry that alligator's jaws apart. It's incredible. And that's not their only weapon. Right back here, I have to hold on to his tail because the tail, right, he sometimes works like a little kid. Anybody that's ever picked up a toddler, when that toddler wants to get down, they just throw their arms up in the air and they start kicking their legs around, just challenging you to keep a hold of them there. They're very smart. He's very smart and very creative. He says, oh yeah, watch this. He's always testing to see if I'm paying attention. He's got very powerful muscles, so he can turn himself around with that tail. He swings his tail like a baseball player swinging a baseball bat, so he can't do any damage with it right now. But an alligator like this that weighs 150 to 200 pounds, which would not be considered a big alligator, could break a human leg with one swipe of their tail. They're big, tough, powerful predators. So somehow people tend to fear big predators. We're often taught to be afraid of them. I was taught to be afraid of a great big predator when I was allowed to see a movie one summer. I was not mentally prepared to see the great big fish with powerful jaws. Yeah, I just showed my niece that the other night here when she stayed with us. Yeah, we're taught to be afraid of the great white shark. People are taught to be afraid of animals like alligators. You don't have to fear them because they play a very essential role. We need to have respect for them. Everything about this animal is built for hunting in the water. You can see he's got these webbed feet there, right? Very powerful webbed feet. His eyes are right on top of his head. You see he's got those vertical pupils there, which means he hunts at night. You can see the nostrils probably right on top of the head there, right there. And of course his ear, which is that dark line right behind his eye. Everything's right on top of the head, kind of like a submarine. And all the bumpy scales, well, check that out. Perfectly adapted to help them camouflage in water because they basically look just like a log floating in the water. They can hold their breath for 2 hours, which means if you're ever lucky enough to actually see an alligator in one of our rivers or lakes or streams or ponds, you're probably not going to see them for very long until they simply disappear below the water and swim away. Now, yes, 500,000 alligators in Texas is a lot, but they're connected to their prey. And there's a very large rodent called the nutria that is found, especially in South Texas. Nutria weighs about 40 to 60 pounds roughly. Yeah, imagine basically a rat as big as a kindergartner. That's what we're talking about. They have a supersized planting animal, which, by the way, much like their much smaller cousin, the prairie dog, eat a lot of plants, and left out of control with no predators could easily cause problems, right? You have to have a predator that's adapted or built for hunting them. So much like the black-footed ferret was adapted for hunting prairie dogs, the American alligator was especially adapted for hunting plant-eating animals like nutria. Yep, because let me tell you, this guy here, he can swim faster and he can move faster on land. Yeah, I didn't mention that, but they can run 30 miles an hour on land. So everyone knows your alligator safety, right? So if you're being chased by an alligator on land, right? You know the rules? Yes, you can climb something alligators don't climb. Run, they say zigzag. I think the Mythbusters tried that. Don't zigzag, just run as fast as you can. By the way, have a head start, cheat. You don't have to have a fair race. I mean, or number 3, just be fast with your friends and family. Go get help. That was a joke, by the way. Yes, so that is Robert, our American alligator. All right. Well, you know, I tend to do a lot of the talking during these presentations. And so if our host maybe can throw everybody else's camera pictures up there, unless I have control of that. And if people wanted to unmute themselves there, let's see here. If there's any questions, there, I can make that bigger.
Anybody have a question?
You can ask any question, by the way. Don't be shy. Even if you want to ask me something you think might be controversial or I might not want to talk about, because when I was there last year, we talked a little bit about some things that people had questions about, and I like engaging in these conversations. I'm really an educator, and so I like to know what their own thoughts and opinions are on things. And I also, because of my background in education, certainly feel like I'm in a good place to answer a lot of questions and give good information for people.
David, last year you had a different group of animals that you showed us.
Yeah.
I'm wondering just how many animals do you take care of?
So we have about 55 animals now here at our facility that we take care of full time. So that's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And despite everything going on since March 13th with us, have been here every single day since then, taking care of them as well. No matter what goes on in the world around us, once our organization took in these animals, it was our responsibility and our dedication to the animals to make sure that we're doing everything for them. So yeah, the animals have not been doing very many programs other than Zoom programs like this. But yeah, we still take care of the same animals that you saw last year. Yep, we're still here taking care of them every single day.
Rebecca wants to know, did you say alligators are in the lakes and streams around Dallas?
Yes. Some people are shocked by that. Very few people actually spot them. It's very rare because they're difficult to see when they're in the water. When they do come up out of the water, typically they're most likely to find kind of like a tall grassy area that they'll come up out of the water. And we frankly don't have very large numbers of alligators in North Texas. When I say 500,000, most of that population is found either in East or Southeast Texas. That's where most of them are found. Up here, very few are found compared to other parts of the state. But yeah, they are considered native. And we actually made it easy for them to live here year round because we created all these artificial lakes. Which worked out great for the alligators. They like the deep water that doesn't freeze over. And so rather than migrate up and down the rivers, they can stay here year round now and do just fine. I did see a question popped up there in the chat. If I open up my chat window, I can probably see them better here. So how many eggs does a female lay at once? Usually it's about 20 to 30 eggs she'll lay at one time. And unlike most reptiles that lay eggs, because not all reptiles actually lay eggs externally, by the way, but out of the reptiles that do lay eggs, most reptiles lay their eggs and they're, of course, done. Female and alligators and crocodiles lay their eggs in a nest on land, up away from the water shoreline so that they don't get flooded because they are reptiles. They're air-breathing animals. If the eggs got submerged underwater, the young would die inside the egg. So they lay them up away from the water line and they cover them up, keep the eggs warm, basically. But the mother, when she slides in the water, she doesn't really go very far away from the nest. And that's the most dangerous alligator in the world, is a female mother alligator that has a nest of eggs up on the shore, because she is there, keeping, any animals that might come across the eggs, raccoons, opossums, coyotes, anything like that, away from the eggs. And she will come charging up out of the water very quickly. But what's amazing is that those 28 to 30 eggs, when she does come up out of the water, when they do start hatching, is when you really see the level of intelligence of alligators and crocodiles, because they care for their young. They actually scoop the babies up as they hatch and they carry them out into the water. And those young usually follow mom around like a baby duckling or something for the first 6 months to 2 years of their life. So they get a head start in life because, yes, alligators are predators, apex predators at the top of the food chain, but you're only at the top of the food chain when you're big enough to fight back. A baby alligator, baby lion, even a baby shark, and no one sing the song, is not really at the top of the food chain until they get a little bit bigger. So let's see here. Oh, we got some good questions here. So let's see, where were you trained for this and how long have you been at this? Well, I guess my beard does have quite a bit of gray, and it might be a hint on how long I've been doing it at this point. I actually started as a docent at the Como Zoo in St. Paul, Minnesota. When I was 18 years old, I went through their volunteer program and did education presentations. Then I went to a school in California. It's known as America's Teaching Zoo now, is the easiest way to find it. And that program I went through, it's unique because you don't just learn all the husbandry and the care, the management and nutrition of the animals, but we also learned a lot about training and handling, which as an educator was very important. My daughter, on the other hand, went to a very good school out in Florida called the Santa Fe Teaching Zoo, and they really specialize in very high levels of animal husbandry and animal care that would be applied, especially like at AZ accredited zoos and ZA accredited zoos for doing more like husbandry and a lot of like what we know now about animals and how long they can live and how to take care of them and all their special needs has come from these people taking minimum wage jobs at zoos with bachelor degrees. And really, it's amazing the work that those people do. So yeah, that's where I went to school. Let's see. So alligators, will they typically attack you in a lake? The answer is no, unless you happen to be in an area where there's a lot of people that visit the lake that are feeding the alligator. So if you feed a wild animal, it loses some of its natural respect or fear of humans. And that's when an animal can become very dangerous. And don't just think like alligators or something like that. Deer. I grew up in Minnesota, and there were stories of white-tailed deer that people rescued on like a farm, and they would bottle feed it and raise it. And then when it got too big, the deer just lived there in their land. And there were always, you know, a story here or there of like somebody showed up, knocked on their door. Here comes the deer running out of the woods and run the person right over. So yeah, animals that lose their natural fear of humans can be very, very dangerous and unpredictable. So yeah, you don't want to be around an alligator that has lost their fear of people. So the alligators that live on golf courses, yeah, those alligators can be somewhat dangerous because they don't have the same level of, I wouldn't say fear even, but this they've been habituated to seeing people, so they don't think humans are really a problem. They're not going to avoid them. Whereas the natural reaction of an alligator out in the wild, and my daughter could tell you this going to school in Florida, is they had a reserve there and a hiking trail. And you go out on the hiking trail, and there would be 12-foot, 800-pound alligators sunning itself on the shore. And we saw people walking up trying to take selfies with this alligator, and it's like, you got to be kidding me. That alligator, the only reason this alligator is not attacking right now is because it's January and it's only about 55 degrees, and the alligator just doesn't have that much energy to chase after you. But you try that the wrong time of year, that alligator is going to get territorial and you're going to get yourself into trouble. So let's see here. Oh, nutria are an invasive species. Yes and no. I mean, so yes, they are invasive because their population has spread, but you know, whether it's natural or not natural is a question mark. I typically think of them as an intrusive species, but somewhat invasive. But now that they're here, we have to deal with them, and American alligators are very good at hunting and eating nutria. So yeah, nutria are considered somewhat invasive in Southeast Texas. We don't have a nutria yet in North Texas. Now, if we could just find something that could hunt and eat 1,000-pound wild hogs, feral hogs, then we got something there. I don't see any more. Oh, we got another one. Do prairie dogs live in urban areas? Well, if you consider Lubbock urban, yes. I don't know if very many people consider Lubbock to be urban, but yes, they live in those kind of cities. As a matter of fact, they live throughout Lubbock. If you look at a map of Texas and you draw a line, just follow Highway 287, which runs from just over here, kind of Fort Worth and Denton, all the way up to Wichita, and then up towards Amarillo there. If you kind of draw a line and go west of Highway 287, that is where you find the prairie dog populations of Texas. There is one prairie dog town still close to the cities. It is at the Fort Worth Nature Center, and they still have a population of prairie dogs out there.
Are there any other questions for David? David, I have one. Do we give you a gratuity for these presentations?
Well, I think you already have paid, of course, for the program, which we greatly appreciate. You know, one of my philosophies has always been wanting to do something for whatever we do, because the programs that we charge fees for our programs, and that is how we support the care of the animals. And so I would just say, if there is some way that you all would like to contribute, you can visit our website. We have some information on there. We do kind of like these fun, like greetings with some of our animals. So if you wanted to do kind of a gratuity, if you wanted to do something like that, that would be great. because we like to make sure our animals are part of everything that we're doing here. So yeah, any of the gratuity, all that stuff, these greeting cards that we do for birthdays and just kind of fun little mini educational videos for birthdays and anniversaries and stuff. People sometimes give tips to us, but every dime just goes towards the care of the animals here. And if you happen to know any teachers, any homeschoolers, anything like that, at least for the foreseeable future into this fall, it sounds like any of the programs that we do for any of the schools are definitely probably going to be virtual programs at this point, because the health department is saying that they just don't want anybody from the outside coming in for any reason. So yeah, please share our information. Anybody you think might be interested in learning more about animals and wildlife.
Can you tell us what is your website?
It is critterman.com.
All right. Victoria, you're not here anymore, right? I think she had to leave for some.
Had a conflict.
What?
She had a conflict and had to leave early.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Critterman.
Thank you very much. And you guys, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me back. And I hope to see you all maybe in person in 2021.
Yeah.
Crossing my fingers.
We hope so. Okay. Now, Chris, has Rita showed up yet?
No.
Okay.
Would have said was what I said at the beginning.
Yeah.
You can plan to, particularly if you're in Dallas, if you live or work in Dallas, if you can go to one of the budget town halls in the next couple of weeks, please contact me, let me know that. We want to make sure that they hear from people, that we want to make sure that CCAP implementation is correctly budgeted.
And one of the meetings this Thursday, the day after tomorrow, involves 5 different council people, right?
Yep.
Well, that would be a good one for some of us to tune into, because we can get at 5 of them at once. Okay. They will listen to people who don't live in Dallas, won't they, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, because after all, we live very close to Dallas.
Yes.
Well, as far as I know, that basically concludes the meeting for tonight. Okay, so I'll just say goodbye, everybody, and thanks for showing up, and thanks for hosting, Chris.
You're welcome.
And hope you're feeling better from what you were the other day.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, tell Dick, hope he feels better.
Thank you.
He doesn't have COVID, does he?
No.
Okay.
We sat at a distance from grandson for a couple of hours in 100 heat this afternoon, and I think it wiped him out.
Okay, well, good night, everybody, and thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.